I'm replacing the rear and middle section of the exhaust with stainless steel one. The front part of the exhaust has a catalyst in it, and I have a replacement front pipe with catalyst, but it's mild steel. So I'm replacing the front pipe before I take it to get the stainless steel pipe fitted. The downpipe connection to the middle pipe is an olive joint with straightforward 13mm nut and bolt. My middle section started all this, it was leaking. And so I'm replacing this catalytic bit and then replacing all that with stainless steel. I need to gain access down there. I'm going to remove the airbox and these pipes. That bolt down there is a straightforward 10mm. There's two 10mm nuts attached to captive bolts. So the one 10mm nut is off, the other one is further back and isn't that obvious, and then that airbox should come out and off. A 10mm socket fits nicely on the top, and this is a 10mm spanner, but it's not having any of it, to the point I've now rounded off the nut. Either going to use this nut splitter or a Dremel to cut through the nut. I've opted to use the splitter first and see what happens. With that 10mm nut split, it's now undoing quite easily with a 11mm. So this lot will come off. And that's it all as it's come out. On this side I've been fortunate, this nut didn't round off. You can't take the bolt out of here because it hits the manifold. So you've got to remove that end cap and slide it out there. I couldn't find a simple way of getting that cup out. There wasn't much access to use a cold chisel. I just opted to saw through it, and then hopefully now it'll collapse and come out. And then I'll have to tackle that side, which won't be so easy with the bolt in the way. If you undo the bolts at the attachment of the exhaust to the manifold, then the exhaust wants to drop down. So I had to support that. I need to take this off in order to get to the lambda sensor. Perhaps I should have done that at the beginning, don't know, but it makes access to the engine bay much harder when you've got everything on axle stands and it's much higher up. So I'm now going to take this plate off. There's two star-headed self-tappers there. That's a T20. I've also got a cable tie, which I presume is an extra addition. This here and here are just clips. With that plate removed, I now have access to that lambda sensor. My lambda sensor is a Bosch. Looks like L5H6 258 003046. It's got 3 wires, appears to be 2 white, 1 black. They lead to these connectors here. The 2 white wires go off to a connector up there, and the single black wire goes to a connector here. It's one of those fairly simple connectors. where you've got a spring and you have to unclip it that way and that way. So it's just a question of, I can't do it without two hands, pushing that bit until it goes off. Access, as it is really hard here, but what I didn't realise was that just up here is some proprietary cable tie, which I dare say you can actually undo, but I opted to cut that clip that was up there, and that does mean that these have dropped down a bit. The one is cable tied there, and now I can see with that proprietary cable tie you could push that tab back and be able to slide it off with two hands. I don't need to remove that lambda sensor while it's in situ because I'm replacing the whole of this catalytic part of the exhaust. As you can see, in the end I used a disc cutter to cut through that bond. Quick comparison of the two, my replacement and the old one, shows that they're very similar, but they're not quite the same. The thickness of the new one compared to the old one, it's different around the cat. So I'm going to have to offer that up and make sure there's enough space. With these cleaned up, you can clip those in and the other connector will just push in to push fit. You need them just on the outside in order to release it. So that I'm going to put back down and get underneath and push the connectors in. I don't know how these connectors are supposed to be routed, but I've chosen to take this wire to the back of that brake pipe going down. I think that'll just give me a bit more room to make the connections. The fitting kit and the ring have both come. The kit has a selection of bits and pieces. I've still got all the original stuff. That spring is obviously wrong. I guess it's for a slightly different Peugeot. That one would do. I guess over the years that one has compressed a little, so I'm going to assume it's those two. And the alternative is I could put this spring back on, I suppose. As far as the bolts go, there's 4 bolts. Well, that is slightly different, so that bolt is the match, not those two, and the rest are generic. The only thing I'm going to do, I think, different is I'm going to put a stainless steel nut on there. Well, I was looking at that nut. It's obviously designed so that when it's on, it doesn't come off. Maybe I won't put a stainless steel one on. There's a shoulder there, and I guess that's to stop you doing the nut up too much and squashing the spring too much. I guess that will ensure the correct tension. What I didn't know when I was working from the top is that when I released the exhaust and took it out of the way, I'd have full access to the exhaust manifold. and those two, that one there and that one there, plugs that everybody talks about not wanting to come loose. I've attached a 1/2 inch long reach socket that allows, on this side, won't be necessary on the other side, that allows the socket to go over the bolt up to those plugs, and it's just on extensions out to a 1/2 inch, and I will tap it to release that. That one on the left hand side came out easy, but then of course I had cut through it. The one on the right is moving slowly, but it's not coming out easily. I've made sure I've put my hand behind to ensure that when I put the socket on, it's not pushing that bolt up until it hits the manifold. I just need to keep tapping it. It has come out the right hand side, but I can't say I was particularly happy with the amount of force I used. Obviously on the one side you can just insert the cup, but on the other side you have to have the bolt already in the cup. I had cleaned up the exhaust manifold holes that take these cups, but these cups didn't just slot in. I felt as they needed to be forced in. I don't see why it should be an interference fit, so I've chosen to just go around it with a file until I can get this cup to just push in nicely on both sides. With those cups filed just a bit, I was able to push them in with a screwdriver. I'd forgotten to remove that compressed ring that's there, and I've got a new one. So with a long screwdriver, and that's the two of them compared. They say it rusts in place. There's actually a lip that sticks out of that manifold, so putting that on and it staying in place isn't a problem. The springs that came with the kit were longer than the original springs, which I just thought was maybe these had been compressed over the years. However, try as I might, with it properly set up and the exhaust in place, I could not get enough thread to put the nut on. So I'm going back to using these old springs. The other springs that came with the kit are smaller but thinner. Now maybe they'll work, but I'm going to opt to put back on the original springs. So I've got one hand from this direction to hold it in place. I had to do all this by feel. On the other hand, I could get up here in order to get that nut on. I'm not sure about the other side. I don't think there's any access because of the pipe work here on my car, which is for the power steering. I could not get the nut with the spring and the cupped washer plus that other fibre washer. I was just on the edge and I couldn't get it to catch. This one's fine. Putting a wedge there, forcing it that way a little bit, it's twisted the exhaust so that I can and have just managed to start by finger the nut on there, but it's only just gone on, so I'm now going to do the whole thing up. Just going to attach the middle exhaust to the front downpipe. I'm going to reuse the existing clamp except with stainless steel bolts. I'm reusing it because I can't be sure of the profile of any of those I've looked at online. And then it's not bad, it's just a little rusty. Getting to the blue one isn't too difficult, but you've got to go in through the, well, I found you've got to go in through the wheel well in order to hold the black one so you can get the connector in. I've started spannering those nut and bolts, but I'm finding it too difficult with it off the ground to reach over inside. So finish that part with the manifold after it's on the floor.